Honey, you're making such a racket. I heard you all the way down in my bedroom. What's wrong?
Honey, I'm glad you're here. I can't sleep. I've had a terrible day. I'm the vice president. Everybody's still making jokes about me. Letterman, Carson, even Polish people are making jokes about me. I can't stand this anymore. And they're laughing at me. I had a meeting today. They says, who do I think had the biggest arm buildup? I said, Schwarzenegger. Yeah, they laughed. Maybe I should have said Popeye. I don't know. I've got to get some sleep, honey. I've got to get some sleep.
Honey, what have I told you? Sticks and stones can break my bones, but...
My advisors will always prompt me, but they're not
That's
here now,
right.
honey. I need you. We got to do it tonight, honey. We have to do it. It's the only way I can get to sleep. I have a big meeting tomorrow, please.
Honey, I'm tired. I have a headache.
You had a headache last night.
Well, I've got a yeast infection.
That was last week.
I have a hangnail.
Well, fix it.
I have a run in my stocking.
Take them off.
The couch needs to be reupholstered.
I'll put a throw over it.
I got a flat tire. I got stuck in traffic.
Well, the car's back here now.
Martians landed, ate my diaphragm, and you know what people say, we shouldn't reproduce.
Well, you're right there.
Right.
No, but honey, all that aside, we've got to do it. It's been 3 weeks. It's your wifely duties. If we could just do it tonight, just this once, I'll never ask you again.
Promise?
I promise.
All right, just this once. All right.
Oh, you're
So where'd you put it?
I don't know. I've lost it.
You're always hiding it from me.
Yeah, but it's your property when...
There it is.
Oh!
All right.
Found it.
Move over. Let's make this quick.
Oh, that's my middle name.
All right. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there lived a brave and noble knight, Sir Danny. The nearby forest was infested with creatures, and it was his mission to make it a kinder, gentler forest. Hello, I'm Phyllis Hamlin. Tonight, we take a look at Dan Quayle, the man, the myth, the vegetable. Recently, all we've been hearing about Quayle is joke after joke after joke. I believe Dan Quayle is more than a joke. Aren't we sick of hearing these? What do you get when you cross a hawk with a chicken? A quail? Or why did the chicken cross the road? To join the National Guard. Or if you are what you eat, Dan Quayle must be a vegetarian. And did you hear the one about... Here to tell us more about Dan Quayle is Vice Presidential Aide and Advisor, Tom Sheikman.
My name is Tom Sheikman. My official title is Advisor to the Vice President. Let me tell you something. I work for Dan Quayle. I'm not an advisor. I'm a nanny. Now, Dan Quayle's trouble started when they found out his dad got him into the National Guard. And George Bush decided to say, I'm proud of Dan's service in the National Guard. I'm thinking, how proud can he possibly be? What's his claim? Gee, not one Vietnamese made it into Indiana. Not a great claim, is it? What's Dan's slogan? I believe in a time of war, a man must serve his country one weekend every other month. I don't think... Not very impressive. Well, big deal. Like, he really would have helped out in the war effort. Like, if we'd have just had Dan Quayle on our side, we'd have kicked those Vietnamese ass. Yeah, so George Bush really was desperate to have him on the ticket, though. This is something most people don't know, because Dan Quayle was theoretically so attractive to women. Yeah, he was real attractive to women. Here's a guy who went down to Florida with Paula Parkinson. Remember her? She's the lobbyist that later turned up in Playboy. They're in the same hotel. He propositions her and strikes out. Now, here's a guy, he's a United States Senator. He's got $200 million, and he's a good-looking man, and he can't get laid. Oh, God. I love it. And George Bush is putting him on the ticket to get the women's vote. Yeah. Why not put Jimmy the Greek on the ticket, too? Yeah. Get that black vote. Shows one consistent thing in Dan Quayle's life. He just can't get into anything without his dad helping. Then this fool has the nerve to compare himself to John Kennedy. John Kennedy screwed Marilyn Monroe in the White House, never got caught. He takes some bimbo to Florida, doesn't get laid, and gets in big trouble. He's no John Kennedy. In fact, he's no Ted Kennedy. Although I don't blame him if you've ever seen his wife. You see Marilyn Quayle? What does she look like? Mary Tyler Moore on crack, huh? kind of pathetic. Let me tell you something. I'm the person who saved Dan Quayle's image. I'm the one who took him out of the country. You notice first he went to Latin America, then he went to Africa, then he went to South America. He's never in this country. And every time Dan comes back, the press says, Dan Quayle in other countries is thought to be a pretty bright guy. That's all my doing. I made a startling discovery his first month in office. I found out Dan Quayle does not sound very stupid to people who don't speak English. Now, my idea is that George Bush should put Dan Quayle in charge of air pollution, because here's a man who lives in the ozone layer. Now, if I sound bitter to you, it's only because I'm constantly having to take care of this man. I took him to a party at the French embassy last week. Marcel Marceau was the guest of honor. He decides he's going to flatter Marcel. He goes up to Marcel Marceau. He says, Mr. Marceau, I'm your biggest fan. I have all your albums. It's a fancy party, and I always order for Dan, because they get embarrassed at these embassies when you order the Happy Meal. And so I ordered for Dan, and there's two waiters hovering over us. I said, I'll have the veal Oscar. He'll have the fettuccine Alfredo. Dan says, how do you know the waiters' names? He's just not It's a guy who spends 3 hours on the TV Guide crossword puzzle with questions like, star of the Bill Cosby Show, Bill? Tom, could you help me with this one? Cosby, you moron. One time I saw him trying to find out, it was a one-letter word, star of the A-Team, Mr. Blank. He spent a half hour on it. Finally asked me, I said, it's Mr. T. He says, oh, I knew that. I just didn't know how to spell it, right? Dealing with a guy who's the vice president, a heartbeat away from the presidency, doesn't have the IQ to be a Star Search spokesmodel. But don't think George Bush was stupid to pick him. You see, Dan Quayle, if nothing else, is impeachment insurance. Because anytime anybody talks about impeaching George Bush says, my vice president is Dan Quayle. Go ahead, impeach me. Make my day. Can you imagine if this man was actually in charge of the country? What do you think would happen? I think it might go something like this. I still don't see why we're meeting here in George's office.
Because George has got a better computer. I patched my Nintendo game into it. Isn't this neat?
Yeah, it's very reassuring. You still think it's a good idea to be here?
Well, of course it is. George is out of the country. I'm in command. I get to play in the big office. It's part of the deal.
Wait, I brought everything you requested. Here's the file on Margaret Thatcher. And here's your Legos and your gummy bears.
Hey, let go of my Legos.
Yeah, you're lucky. Reagan left some of that stuff over when he left the White House. Now, look, let's get to our agenda.
All right.
First of all, Iran.
What's your jogging got to do with this?
No, Ayatollah.
Well, if you told me, why are you telling me again?
Ayatollah Khomeini.
I don't know how many. You're the advisor. You tell me.
Ayatollah Khomeini from Iran. He died.
He died? I didn't know he was sick.
Yeah, well, he's dead, and the new guy is Rafsanjani. You've got to meet with him, and you have to be very careful. Remember, he's a very religious man. He's a Shiite.
Hey, watch your language.
Yes, I'm sorry. Now, during this whole meeting, your wife, Marilyn, has to wear a veil over her face.
Oh, is that because of an Iranian custom?
No, that's because we took a vote, okay? Now, look, you also have a meeting with Arafat.
Who?
Yasser.
It's about time you called me, sir. You know, you don't give me the respect I deserve.
No, sir, not yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir?
No, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Who is he?
No, sir. Yasser Arafat. He's the head of the Arab League.
Arab League? What's his average?
It's not that kind of league. Look, let's just move on. We have this meeting with Chad.
And Jeremy?
Chad is a country, and they're going to ask you for money. You know what we do when people ask us for money?
Yes, call my dad.
Yeah, it seems to work. Okay, and then you have your meeting with the Queen of England.
Oh, Boy George. I just thought of that right off the top of my head.
But you do know who the Queen of England is?
Of course, Margaret Thatcher.
No, Margaret Thatcher is the Prime Minister.
A minister? I don't think she's religious. You know, and I've never seen her wear one of those little clerical collars. Check your facts. One thing I can't stand is incompetency.
Yeah, I know how you are with incompetency. You also got a meeting with Princess Di.
The princess died too? Maybe she died of the same thing Ayatollah did.
Yes, sir.
Arafat.
No, sir. Princess... Look, you also got to meet with Margaret... Do you need anybody else for your meeting with Margaret Thatcher?
Yes, I'll need the interpreter there.
You don't need an interpreter. Margaret Thatcher is from England. She speaks English. You don't need an interpreter. Yeah, we'll get an interpreter.
Well, see, I don't want to be in the same room alone with her at any one time.
Why on earth not? She's a very nice woman.
She's really nice. She's one of the hottest-looking babes I've ever seen. Boy, I don't think I could control myself.
How can you say that when you have your wife, Marilyn, waiting at home for... Yeah, good point. I guess Margaret Thatcher does look like a hot babe to you.
You ever seen Margaret's butt in the pale moonlight? Ooh, what a looker.
It's a wonderful image.
Sturdy woman.
Okay, now you have your meeting. This is very important. You have your meeting with Gorbachev.
Who?
You know Mikhail Gorbachev?
Oh, the ballet dancer, yes.
He's not a ballet dancer. He's the head. He's a political figure in Russia.
He's the premier. His movie opens this weekend.
It's not that kind of premiere. Okay, look, when you get to meet with Gorbachev, You're gonna have to, for your first time, you're gonna get to see Red Square.
Oh, I can't stand that little thing on his head. It looks gross.
Can we get some things straight? Red Square is in Moscow. It's a square. It's not that thing on Gorbachev's head. Margaret Thatcher is not a hot babe. Princess Di is not dead. And Boy George is not a queen. You know, 1 out of 4 is pretty good for you.
1 out of 4, that's 48%. Pretty good.
Yeah, good point. Let's get on to our next... and Tanker. Tanker.
Oh, you're welcome.
Tanker. The tanker that's grounded. It's off the coast. It spilled oil, and now it's grounded.
It should be grounded. It's a bad tanker. No desserts. No television for a week. We have to be firm. Read my lips.
Yes, sir.
Arafat.
No. Oh, my God, the red phone's ringing. It's the hotline. Do you know what that means?
Commissioner Gordon.
No.
Just kidding. I'll get it. Yellow. Yes. Yes. Yes, yes. No. Oh, this is serious. I'll have to make a decision right now. Let's go with the nuclear attack. Yeah, that's right. That's my word. You betcha.
God, what have you done?
No, don't worry. That was Sid's Deli. They ran out of cheesecake. I ordered this nuclear attack. It's like frozen yogurt and gooey stuff. It's yummy.
I can't believe you. Don't you think you should leave the hotline for more important things than just ordering desserts?
Of course. I ordered a pizza earlier. I use it for important things.
That's wonderful. That's very...
Boy, this is getting weird. Just look at this.
What's that big thing that the Pac-Man's gobbling? It looks like Russia.
Uh-oh.
Oh, my God, you've just launched a nuclear attack.
Uh-oh. Oh, what are we gonna do?
You better call somebody. Who are you gonna call? No, not them.
Wait, I know who to call.
There must be somebody you can call.
Yes, I know. Somebody that's been here before, that's wise, that's wiser than both of us. Carter.
You're gonna call Carter?
Hello, Amy?
Quayle is also concerned about the quality of our educational system. At a recent speech to the National Teachers Association, he said, quote, 3 out of 4 high school graduates don't even know basic math. That is nearly half, unquote. Well, we all know Dan Quayle has many outstanding qualities. There's, he flosses after every meal. Well, some people have accused Quayle of taking the easy route because he is a very wealthy man. We all know that money can't buy you happiness, but it can get you good seats at the theater, the opera, and on the Senate. Yes, there are those who think we have a crisis of leadership in this country. When Quayle was asked, where are the Washingtons, the Jeffersons, the Jacksons, he said, I'll tell you where they are. They're playing professional football and basketball. Well, lucky for us, Quayle only played in college. Here with us now, a personal friend from that bygone era, Bobby Kosser.
I'm Dan Quayle's best friend. I think that's pretty obvious. Anyway, everyone knows of his great wealth and all that. Everyone thinks that he's had a charmed life, but the truth is, as his best friend and friend for his entire life, I can tell you that he had a very difficult childhood. Few people realize that in 1956, during the Hungarian Revolution, Dan Quayle was separated from his parents for 3 years, and there was no reason for it because they were living in Indianapolis at the time. But I think he's come back really strong. People put him down. They say he has no talent, no visions. He lacks everything. I say when you consider his ability, he's obviously an overachiever. He's always been irresponsible. In high school, I remember people voted him the most irresponsible. In college, once again, the most irresponsible. We always knew someday he'd have a job where there would be no responsibility. But we never dreamt that he'd become Vice President of the United States, the most important job with the least responsibility. As his best friend, I like to say I think Dan Quayle has taken no responsibility as far as he humanly can. We go all the way back to school together. Dan and I didn't go to school together. We didn't go to Vietnam together. We did everything together. We attended college so seldom, I don't even remember the name of the school. As far as I'm concerned, the school should have been called His Father Fixed Our Grades University. The man is an athlete. I'm not sure you realize he's an athlete, do you? You Dan Quayle fans out there? But he's a vain athlete, which sometimes gets in the way. He and I were on the swimming team together. Few people realize Dan Quayle is the only man to have swam the English Channel with water wings so as to not ruin his hair. He's also an outdoorsman. Are you aware of that? He is a great outdoorsman. I remember a spring break that Dan and I spent at a Club Med in Indianapolis, where we went on a squirrel safari together. We took Uzis with us. We were able to kill 1,500 squirrels. We got very lucky. But when you think about it, the man is lucky. When you think about it, Dan Quayle, Vice President of the United States, how lucky can you possibly get? Anyway, I think that you know that he's lucky in love. At least you think he's lucky in love, right? He and Marilyn, but they don't have the best relationship. I'm not only his best friend, but it's awkward for me because I'm also her best friend. She tells me things, he tells me things. I'll tell them to you. Just promise me you didn't hear it from me. She says he's sexually immature. She says he's sexually immature. All I know is in the middle of the night, they rip the covers off each other, and they don't even sleep in the same bed. He claims Marilyn is a very spiteful person. He claims, I don't know if you're aware, but do you know that Dan Quayle has a heart murmur? It was brought to light during the Vietnam War when it would murmur, "Don't go, don't go, don't go." The doctor told Marilyn if his heart fails, punch him in the chest. She panics. Instead of punching him in the chest, she kicks him in the groin and threw him down a flight of stairs. It's very bad in an emergency. At least that's what her lawyer says. Anyway, I'm best friends with him. People say to me, "Bobby, is he more popular than he was before he was vice president?" And I'm happy to say, yes, he is. Especially when people mistake him for Pat Sajak. Since he's become vice president, he is more popular. I think back and I say, you know something, he is. But I think as well, I said, now that he's the most popular he's ever been, the truth is, even at his most popular, this man is not popular. It is true, I know. Voters say the only way they'd be happy is, what could Dan Quayle to do serve his country the best? They say that what they would like, the voters of the United States say that Dan Quayle can best serve his country if we would trade him for the hostages. And you wonder, why do we so rarely have Dan Quayle quoted? Well, there's a reason for that. That's because the man has no opinion. When asked about Ronald Reagan, Dan Quayle says, "I think he looks a lot like his wax figure." And when asked about the Iranian arms deal, Dan Quayle said, "As far as I know, the United States government had nothing to do with selling the arms to Iran. As far as I know, a heavy metal rock station gave them away. And Khomeini was the 10th caller." I've known him in my entire life, and let me tell you, being Dan Quayle's best friend does not make me feel like a lottery winner.
Dan Quayle wasn't always vice president. He had a life before. For example, Dan Quayle was in the National Guard. Now, a lot of people make fun of that, but I know that if the Viet Cong had attacked Muncie, Indiana, Dan Quayle was ready. At least I know that Dan Quayle served his country instead of going to Canada. Of course, with his academic record, I'm not sure he knew where it was. The fact is, Dan Quayle just didn't do that well in college. He received a D in his political science course. When asked how he could receive a D in that class, Quayle replied that the grade wasn't originally that high, but his father knew the professor. But who better to tell us more about this period in his life than Dan Quayle fan and historian Brad Slate.
Hello, I'm Dan Quayle's biggest fan. Actually, I'm Dan Quayle's only fan, but I think it's about time we stop putting the man down. What do you say? How about a round of applause for Dan Quayle for a change? Too many people are putting him down, and I know I'm just ahead of my time because someday all of you will want to know more about Dan Quayle, and that's why I'm here, because I'm building a museum to house all the memorabilia that I've collected about Dan Quayle's life. And I think it's only appropriate that I'm putting this museum in a classroom that he attended when he went to 3rd grade. It was where he spent the best 2.5 years of his life. And I have some very interesting artifacts. I'm taking that over there, but I thought I'd stop by and just show you some of the things I've collected so far. Real treasures, folks, real gems, things you gotta have. Dan Quayle's first report card. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, that was for his dad called the school. This is his first report card. The new book that's just out, Everything You Wanted to Know About Dan Quayle. All right, I guess there's a printing error on that. We'll get to that a little bit later. We have the Dan Quayle Purple Heart. Many people don't know this, but Dan Quayle took a shot in his National Guard training days, and he got the Purple Heart. Of course, the shot was a tetanus shot, but he took it like a man. Very interesting things. We have one of my favorites, the Dan Quayle Personal Advisor. That's right. When he goes to some of these things and he doesn't know what they're talking about, he can just say, for instance, inflation. Give the little cord a tug, and...
Inflation. When the volume of money and credit goes up, prices go up. Inflation.
It's the Dan Quayle Speak and Learn Advisor. We should all have that. I also have the... This is the letter from the draft board that they sent to Dan, his first draft board letter. I can't read it because the ink's pretty well smeared from those tear stains, so we can't get to that tonight. But I have other things. That's right, I have the tax form from last year, Dan Quayle's tax form. It's very interesting. They put under source of income, he put allowance. And he was confused, so he had to have this done by somebody else. He was going to do it himself, but they had a box for occupation and a box for dependents, and, well, his occupation is being a dependent, so he didn't know what to do. We also have a memo. I have a memo here that he sent to the Secret Service just about a couple months ago. Let me read it. It's actually, everything's spelled right. It's a rarity. Recently, I've noticed that during public outings with large groups of people, there has been no Secret Service guards assigned to protect me. I'm sure this is an oversight. I don't have to remind you that I'm the Vice President. In the event that anything happens to President Bush, I'm the next in line. Well, the Secret Service was very glad, and that they reminded him of that, so they gave him this jacket. He'll be easy to spot, and it has a nice little decal on the back. One of my favorite items. Oh, and, you know, President Bush signs documents, and he gives the pens to people as mementos. It's something amazing. I've managed to get a couple of document signees that Dan used here. They're the big ones, the jumbo crayons. That's right. And, of course, this just came out this year. This is very exciting stuff. And this is just some of the things you're going to see at that museum. This is the Dan Quayle Commemorative National Guard Tour of Duty doll. See, there's Dan in all of his fatigues, and it comes complete with a subversive, a hippie, somebody that's make love, not war, all the things we're against. So it was very easy. We'll reenact that moment for you now. Here's the hippie. Here comes Dan sneaking up. Oh, he's shooting rubber bullets at the hippie. No problem, but the hippie isn't easily daunted. He dodges the bullets. Dan counters. He moves over and shoots again. The hippie charges him. Dan goes into the I'm gonna surrender. Help! Help! Help me! Help me! Daddy! Daddy! So we have that. We just have a couple of more items because there's just so much I could never get through it here today. I have the tape. You know, Nixon went in to talk to Quayle, as if they needed that as a reference. He went in to find out what Dan Quayle was all about, and I have for you, and this is going to take up a lot of time, it's the 30-minute discussion that Nixon and Quayle had. We have that in the booth, so sit back and enjoy this. Dan Quayle and Richard Nixon, and you're going to hear it. It's never been heard before. Go ahead and roll that.
Hello, Dan.
Hello, Mr. Former, hello, Dick. Goodbye, Dan. Yes, nice talking to you. Goodbye, Mr. Goodbye, Dick. We have like 28 missing minutes here. You don't think that Nixon... Nah. Well, we'll try to get that tape for you somehow, but I want to get serious for a minute. Because this is a very serious subject. This is something that I just unearthed last week. I read it. I don't know if I can do it again tonight because it brought tears to my eyes. Much like any time Dan has to spell anything. But I want to get down and live personally with you tonight, and I want to read a letter. Because a lot of people are always saying, Dan Quayle doesn't have emotions, he doesn't care about people. That's not true. He's a very emotional person, and he has feelings just like you and you. Well, maybe not you, but... This is a letter that Dan Quayle sent to his mother when he was in the height of warfare on the battlefield in his National Guard training unit. And like any GI, or as like he likes to say, G.I., he was very distraught because he didn't know what the outcome of that day would be. So try to hold back the tears as I recreate this letter to his mother the best I can. Dear Mommy, by the time you get this letter, I'll probably already be declared neutralized by B Company. Sounds of simulated gunfire all around me, and the enemy is moving in for the victory. Well, we won yesterday, so I guess it's their turn. But I don't think that they play fair. I called Aliaxi Oxenfree, and they pretended like they didn't hear me. Can you imagine that? Well, I guess that's what war does to honest men. Sergeant Tommy told me that I did real good today and promised me an extra chocolate milk tonight at dinner. All around, I see the casualties of war. Strained hamstrings, sunburn, hangnails. One guy got a heat rash and had to be sent home. Who knows? Maybe he's the lucky one. It's been a grueling month here. Hard beds, domestic champagne, and all the other atrocities we soldiers have to go through. I can't wait till this is over and I can come home to you and Sis and Mr. Snugglebear. Tomorrow we're moving into the front lines. I have to admit the thought of someone sticking a daisy in the end of my rifle really scares me. I'd be a fool if it didn't. But if a man can't stand up and defend the administration building, well, I guess he just isn't a man, is he? It's like they always say, war is heck. Please, this is very hard for me. Because I've never seen such bad spelling. P.S. Tell Dad to keep working on my transfer. I think I'm finally ready for the school crossing guard job, even though it seems a bit dangerous. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. I just want you to remember one thing before I go, that if anybody ever comes up to you and say, what's Dan Quayle good for? Why do we need him in the White House? Well, I have an answer to that. We need Dan Quayle in the White House because when visiting dignitaries come, their children have somebody to play with. But right now, we're in for a really extra special treat because there's somebody coming to the stage who I think you may not know, but you're going to love just like Dan did at one time. His former girlfriend, Muffy, is here tonight, live on this stage. Let's hear it for Muffy.
Hi, I'm Muffy, Danny's high school girlfriend, and my real name is like Muffin, but Danny's like real clever, so he took the word muffin and he made it into Muffy, so I kept it. Okay, so, Danny and I met like on a blind date, and he called me. Well, actually, he like had his father call me, and yeah, and I remember it as if it were yesterday, because there was a knock on the door, and there stood like the most handsome, suave, sophisticated, sexy, like macho man I had ever seen, and well, that was Dan's chauffeur. Yeah. And then Dan came in, and I thought, oh my God, Robert Redford. And then he spoke, and then I thought, oh my God, howdy doody. And then I introduced him to my father, and I would have introduced him to my mother, but she's dead. Oh God. Okay. So anyway, Dad wanted to know what Dan wanted to be, and he said he'd like to go into politics and become a senator, maybe even Vice President of the United States. And Dad said, yeah, I'm thinking of being the Pope. Dad's real religious now. So anyway, we decided to leave in Dan's limo, and I could see he had money, and we were going to have a swell time. So he said we were going to a great place for dinner, and he knows a guy. So I splurged, and I had my Whopper with cheese. And then Dan asked if I wanted seconds, and I said, oh, no thanks, better not, because I'm a bulimic. And he said, oh, what part of Bulimia are you from? And then at the end of the date, he gave me his letter sweater, and even though it was spelled wrong, it was really romantic. See, I'm dyslexic, but Danny always understood me perfectly. And we used to talk about our dreams. You know, even back then, he wanted a family, 3 children, a boy and a girl. Yeah. And I wanted to be a beautician because I could cut hair with my right and left hands, and Dan said he would give his right arm to be ambidextrous. Yeah. And Danny, he taught me the difference between right and wrong, but I forget which is which now. Well, anyway, okay. So he always made difficult things simple. Now, he said left is the driver's side and right is the passenger side, and even after we got back from England, I still remembered that. Yeah. Oh, and he was always saying famous things or something, to be or not to be. Is that a question? And Muffy, we are what we pretend to be. And, yeah, and it's not who you know, it's who my daddy knows. And we have nothing to fear except if my daddy goes bankrupt. Oh, yeah. You know, I could tell Dan was real smart because he used to get lost in thought. I guess it was unfamiliar territory. Yeah, Danny and I had some really great times. You see, we never really broke up. He just forgot my phone number. Well, at least that's what he said when he called. Oh, well. Anyway, hi, Dan. Okay, bye.
Interesting.
Hello, I'm Dan Quayle, your Vice President. Oh, please hold back the applause. I called this press conference to answer a few questions and I thought I would, why did I call this press conference?
To show them how hip and in tune you are, sir.
Right. To show you how hip and in tune I are, sir. Well, that is, hit it.
Vice President. Dan. Vice President. Dan Quayle.
Well, I just thought I'd like to take this occasion to tell you what it's like to grow up a Caucasian. Oh, gee, gosh, jeepers and golly, my childhood idols were Beaver and Wally. I never got in trouble, I never went to jail. I'm a rapping fool, my name is Danny Quayle. Yes, baby, yes, baby, yes.
Yes, baby, yes, baby, yes. Yo, baby, yo.
I knew that. I'm no Jack Kennedy. I'm the boy next door, and boy am I glad I was born to an influential dad. No Army, Navy, Air Force or Marine. I may have eaten crow, but I never ate beans. I served my country, sure was hard. My tour of duty was the National Guard. Yes, baby, yes, baby, yes.
Yo, baby, yo.
Right, I knew that. I'm really proud of old George Bush. When they said not Quayle, he told them shush. He took me on, believed in me. He calls me his insurance policy. With me at his side, he'll be okay, as long as I'm just a heartbeat away. Yes, baby, yes, baby, yes.
Yo, baby, yo.
I hate it when I do that. What's next?
Break dance, sir.
Oh, that's right, my break dance. I'm bad. You know I'm bad.
You're bad. You're awful.
Let's take it home to my homeboys.
Vice President.
Dan Quayle.
Ow!
Say what?
And I'll try harder than Nixon, Ford, and even Carter. When George is visiting foreign land,
doing a
I'm in
good
charge.
job as Vice
I'm in
President.
command. I'm your worst nightmare. I'm your greatest fear. You're stuck with me for the next 4 years. Yes, baby, yes, yes. Oh. Yo, baby, yo, baby, yo. This is my Get Fresh crew. So get fresh. You think they're gonna air this on Yo MTV Raps? What is that show anyway? I'm feeling it. Feel the beat.
Suppose you were an idiot. Suppose you were vice president. But I repeat myself. Who is Dan Quayle? He is many things to many people. To me, he is the male counterpart to Vanna White. I'm not sure what he's doing or why he's there, but he looks good, doesn't he? Dan Quayle shows us that every boy can grow up to be president, and every boy that doesn't want to grow up can be vice president. Bye-bye. I believe Dan Quayle is more than a joke.
We gotta do it tonight, honey. We have to do it. It's the only way I can get to sleep. I have a big meeting tomorrow, please.
Honey, I'm tired. I have a headache.
You had a headache last night.
Well, I've got a yeast infection.
That was last week.
I have a hangnail.
Well, fix it.
I have a run in my stocking.
Take them off.
The couch needs to be reupholstered.
I'll put a throw over it.
I got a flat tire. I got stuck in traffic.
Well, the car's back here now.
Martians landed, ate my diaphragm, and you know what people say, we shouldn't reproduce.
Ah, you're right there.
But we never dreamt that he'd become Vice President of the United States, the most important job with the least responsibility. As his best friend, I like to say I think Dan Quayle has taken no responsibility as far as he humanly can. We go all the way back to school together. Dan and I didn't go to school together. We didn't go to Vietnam together. We did everything together.
I still don't see why we're meeting here in George's office.
Because George has got a better computer. I patched my Nintendo game into it. Isn't this neat?
That's very reassuring. You think it's a good idea to be here?
Well, of course it is. George is out of the country. I'm in command. I get to play in the big office. It's part of the deal. We have one of my favorites, the Dan Quayle personal advisor. When he goes to some of these things and he doesn't know what they're talking about, he can just say, for instance, inflation. Give the little cord a tug, and...
Inflation. When the volume of money and credit goes up, prices go up. Inflation.
Vice President.
Dan Quayle.
Vi- vi-
Say what?